Welcome back to Cocktails and Classics. After our 2-week hiatus, I believe it is at this point,
It's been
we
a while.
finally, you guys were waiting. You were like, when's that Everything Everywhere all at Once episode going to show up? Here
It's
it
finally
is.
here. We've got all
this
the
week-
important characters online for today's episode.
We're missing absolutely no one.
Is this how you guys talk about me when I'm not here? I feel like this is how you talk about me when I'm not here.
No, Zach and I just had a deep conversation last time about Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. I believe that's what we watched, right?
Yeah.
No. What did we do?
I think
Yes.
it was that one.
It was that one. I was gone.
Okay.
I was on a trade
I was
show
also
trip,
gone, but I don't remember why.
to which I was telling people that I was there working with about the podcast, and we gained at least one listener. So, shout out to Matt.
Nice.
Thanks for listening.
Hi, Matt.
Hello, welcome.
This week we're doing Everything Everywhere All at Once, the 2022 action-adventure comedy by Daniels. I'm Dylan. Joining me, as always, are Ben and Cam.
Hi.
And to kick things off and get everybody in the right mood, we're going to go to this week's cocktail. Courtesy of Ben, a nice idea here. Why not do for Everything Everywhere All at Once, every cocktail all at once, or every
What?
alcohol all at once? The Long Island iced
Oh
tea.
my god. Oh,
Genius.
that's fair. Yeah. Wow.
If you haven't had a Long Island, you should try it. It's kind of like a rite of passage, I would say.
It's what a 21-year-old orders when they go to the bar for the first time.
Or my
you know, like-
uncle, who's 50 now at this point, I feel like.
It's one of those things that if you don't know what you're drinking, you can order it without really hesitating, and it makes you sound like you've been drinking. But at the same time, everyone that hears you order it immediately knows that you don't drink.
I will say though, if you're going to a place that the drinks are pretty like bad, you know, like they don't make very good drinks, I think a Long Island is a safe one to get because it's just an amalgamation of, I mean, as the name, as we just said, everything. So it's kind of hard to mess it up too bad. And it's pretty effective.
Yeah, I would definitely set a limit going in, depending on like the size you go for. Usually a couple get you feeling some type of way. To make one, it is 3/4 of an ounce of vodka, white rum, silver tequila, gin, triple sec, simple syrup, lemon juice, and then you top it with cola. If you're feeling a little fancy, you can garnish it with a lemon wedge. A Long Island it's a classic. Somehow, all of that alcohol doesn't taste really like alcohol. Kind of gets lost in the sauce. It's like witchcraft, let's be honest.
It is kind of weird that you think of like a Long Island, everyone's, the Long Island iced tea. There's no iced tea in it, and it's just a bunch of random alcohol thrown into a glass. And it's like,
And a splash of Coke.
this tastes like iced tea.
It's definitely a classic cocktail, I would say. And if you're feeling a little adventurous, check out the Drizzling Casker links below to get 1 million bottles of alcohol delivered directly to your door. We get a little kickback from that, and you would get a shit ton of alcohol. You know, what's to hate? And check out Everything Everywhere All at Once. It's not available anywhere right now, so I think you're going to have to go rent it. I'm sure it'll be on either Amazon or Hulu shortly, because A24 usually goes pretty quickly to those two services. And yeah, we're going to spoil pretty much all of it, so get ready. Everything Everywhere All at Once, great title. One of those long ones. It's kind of like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. I'm going to get tired of saying it all. Is a 2002 action-adventure comedy film by Dan Kwan and Daniel Scheinert, also known as Daniels. I believe they did Swiss Army Man, and I don't know if they've done another movie, but I know they did the Turn Down for What music video. Was like their first big thing they did. Written by Daniels, stars Michelle Yeoh, Kei-Hu Kwan, Stephanie Su, James Hong, Jamie Lee Curtis is in there, Jenny Slate, Biff Whiff from I Think You Should Leave. He plays the
Yes.
Santa.
I noticed. I was like, Well, I noticed it when I watched it in theater, but when I was watching this time, I was like, oh, I forgot Santa Claus is in this movie. He plays Santa Claus, and I Think You Should Leave when Santa tries to do like badass action movie roles.
Randy Newman voiced Raccacoonie. I did not know that. Which what a just crazy bit they leaned into there. That was like, oh yeah, haha, no, that's not Ratatouille. It's not Raccacoonie, it's Ratatouille, and then just went really hard leaning into that bit and like brought it to life actually. Everything Everywhere All at Once is the story of an aging Chinese immigrant who's swept up in an insane adventure where she alone can save the world by exploring other universes, connecting with the lives she could have led. Some call it the ultimate multiverse movie. Currently sits at an 8.2 out of 10 on IMDb. It's the number 145 top-rated movie on IMDb's top 250. Cam, I think, is the only one who had seen this film before.
That's right, yeah.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I just didn't make it to the theaters. Everyone was like, Dylan, you got to see this movie. You would love it. They weren't wrong. It was kind of batshit insane for most of the movie. I was like, where's this going to go next? Ben, what did you think on your first viewing?
So I knew this movie came out. I knew it was something about multi-dimensions, but I really did not know what I was walking into when the movie started. And it started, and I'm like, okay, what? Everyone talked this up. I'm so confused. This just seems... This lady's just, kind of whatever, going about her day, running a laundromat, and then shit starts to happen. You're like, oh, okay. I didn't realize it was like I didn't expect like a 90s style, early 2000s style, like kung fu movie. That was not something I was ready for, but I loved it. Yeah, this was a movie that I'm surprised I didn't pay more attention to when it was coming out. I think just probably due to the fact that so many other things were going on earlier this spring/summer that I have not paid attention to what movies have been coming out.
Yeah. I mean, this also came out with I think the Batman came out right around this time.
Mm-hmm.
And the Spider-Man movie, I think, came out just before or after. So it was
Yeah.
there was a ton of blockbusters.
There were.
That this kind of snaked in between, but it was still it still did really well. I think
did
it's
well.
still in theaters.
It is. I went to look it up to find where to watch it, and what came up was a bunch of movie theaters around me. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
All right, how do I streaming? Where do I stream this? Because I'm not going to a theater.
Yeah, I want to know how well it did. I'm sure we could look it up, but I want to know how well it did between weekends, because I feel like this is a movie where it did fairly well the first weekend, and then a bunch of people saw it and were like, holy shit, you got to go watch this movie. And then it did really well the second weekend and then thereafter. Word of mouth type of thing,
Well, A24 likes to do, sometimes they'll do the limited release. So according to IMDb, the opening weekend, it made $500,000.
Oh, but
And
that's
then so far worldwide, it's grossed $92 million.
Okay.
I was gonna say, I know they do a lot of limited, one or two theaters in an area might have it, and then a couple weeks later it goes a full. So I'm curious to know if that $500,000 is opening weekend for them, in terms of it's opening weekend, but it's only opened halfway.
So it opened March 25th, apparently. And it made $200,000 the first day. And then by the following week, it had made, it was making $300,000 a day. By the following week, so 2 weeks after it released, it was making $2 million a day on the weekends. So it was progressively growing, it looks like.
Yeah.
And now it's starting to die down a little bit, but it seems like
I
people
will
are
say I
still.
got on to IMDb just to look at the casting in that because I didn't recognize. I recognized Michelle Yeoh. I recognized James Hong. Obviously, he's been in a ton of stuff. Still one of my favorite like cheesy action movies of Big Trouble in Little China. So every time I see him, I kind of that's what I think of. But I couldn't place the main like the dad, the husband.
Yeah.
I couldn't figure it out, and I was talking to Dylan, and I went, "Oh my god!" I pulled up my IMDb, and I'm like, "It's Short Round from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom." How did I not?
Yeah.
He was also, I think, Data in the Goonies. That was his
Yeah,
name.
I had watched an interview with him at some point for this movie, and like that was Indiana Jones was his last feature role before this, right? And
I
obviously
looked
that
at
was a long time
Yeah, I
ago.
looked at IMDb, and I saw that he really
Yeah.
kind of did like a couple things in the 90s, and then he was in like one last thing in 2000 like one, and then he hadn't been in anything since until like 2021.
Yeah. Well, apparently part of it was due to like the lack of like meaningful roles for Asian men in film.
Well,
And so there were
yeah.
just no roles that he wanted to take. And then it kind of like snowballed where he didn't want to take any roles because there weren't any like stereotypical, like non stereotypical roles for him to take. And then, he didn't get work from there. So like yeah. And it was really cool to just like, I don't know. Like I heard him, say those things and like, he's like probably my favorite character in this movie, honestly. Like
Yeah.
personally.
Yeah, no, I
Uh,
thought he was just like so interesting in the kind of I think of him in terms of like three, right? There were like three typical
there were three
versions.
of him.
You know,
Yeah.
the standard that you meet at the beginning of the movie, kind of the super spy version, and then the businessman version.
Yep.
And I thought he just did such a good job, and he made you. I think of all the characters, I feel like he made me like feel the most.
Yes.
Of being like,
Yeah.
damn, like a knife to the heart when he's like, I think maybe, I think you were right when you said we would have been happier if we didn't get married. And she's like, I never said that. He's like, your face did. It was like, oh, ow, my heart.
Well, that's the thing
He's
is like
a
so
sad
much of this
man.
movie is this like kung fu, like Scott Pilgrim Matrix esque inspired, like shoot 'em up, like fighty kung fu flicks, but uh, there's still so much like heart in the
Yeah.
movie. Like I was not expecting the end where it's like turns into kind of like a romance, like drama movie for like the last
Kind
30
of.
minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if romance, I mean,
I'd call it more like a
I would
family drama.
I was going to say I think at its core this movie is actually a family drama, but specifically an immigrant family drama. Like one that centers around an immigrant family into the US who has expectations on them, who, they put expectations onto their daughter, and then their daughter basically lashes out, and and it kind of gets resolved near the end. But I don't know. The thing I love about this movie is it has all that, and it tells it in such a great way. But then, on top of all that, you're like feeling all these things through like googly eyes and fight scenes and like dildos being smacked around and like all these things where it's like it's funny and it's silly, but it's also like very intense and action packed, and it's also very like sad and then heartwarming, and it manages to do all of those things very well.
All at once.
Yes. All of those things everywhere all at once.
Yeah, I mean, had either of you guys seen Swiss Army Man?
No.
I haven't. It's one of those things that like I keep seeing it, and I'm like, I need to sit down and watch this, but
Of course you do. It's got Paul Dano in it, Ben.
it's got Paul. Yeah. Well, not only that, but I will also say I know this is going to be blasphemous. I wasn't a big Harry Potter person. Like that just wasn't. It wasn't my scene. Um, but Daniel Radcliffe is fucking hilarious. So I love when he does comedy stuff. Like he's such a good like comedic actor that unfortunately, it kind of gets overshadowed because, he was Harry Potter. But I just think his comedic acting is really good, and I want to watch it because I think he's funny, and I think those two together would be hilarious. But it's just one of those things of finding more than like 30 to 40 minutes at a time to watch something gets tricky.
Well, it definitely feels like this movie quite a bit. Um, I mean, the plot of Swiss Army Man is like Paul Dano's on a deserted island, and a body washes up, and Daniel Radcliffe is a Swiss Army Man, so he can like use him to do all these different tasks on the island, and it's just as absurd. I mean, as you can probably imagine, using somebody to be a tool is gets a little wild.
I would imagine so.
And this movie definitely kind of like gets those similar elements. Same with like the turn down for what music video and the things that made Daniels famous. You get all of those elements in this movie, but you also get a lot of heart, and I think that's what makes the movie so good. Is like, oh, you could make an absurdist like comedy film, and I think the multiverse element adds a lot. But I think where it really hits home is like all of these like human nature things of like the aging grandfather, and he's like from the old world, so you don't want to tell him that our daughter has a girlfriend. Oh well, our marriage is starting to like fall apart, and when do I I want to talk to you because I want to serve you these papers. And he can't like James. Oh shit, what's his name? Wayman.
Yeah.
Can't get a second with his wife to like give her these papers, and then she ends up finding out like just out of the blue. It's
Well, and like he
there's a lot
doesn't
of
even
human elements.
Yeah, and like it's even more like heartbreaking than that because it's like he doesn't want to divorce her, but he is basically like at one point he basically explains like I did this because it might force us to talk about our issues and resolve them. Like he doesn't want to get divorced. He wants to resolve his issues with his wife, but he can't, as you said, can't find a time to talk to her. And she has this opinion of him that he's kind of like oafish and doesn't really know what to do any of the time. All the while, though, like he's, with the tax stuff, he's making stuff happen. Like he's buying them time and like actually doing things his way, but she just doesn't really get it.
Yeah, because I think he says something along the lines of like one of his friends or somebody he knows.
Someone at church.
Yeah, they were gonna have a divorce or like had the papers, and then were able to like discuss it.
Yeah. Like I said, he was my favorite character, but I think Jamie Lee Curtis should get some real props for this movie
Oh my
because
gosh.
she was great. She was like played the part very well and was just so stupid silly with like a serious face all the time. It was awesome.
I love Jamie Lee Curtis. She's like such a good actress.
Yeah, even with the friggin' hot dog hands scenes where she would like play the hot dog, like play they were like, obviously like in a relationship or married or something. And she would like play all these ridiculous things. Or she would play it very seriously even though she had hot dog fingers on.
I just give her credit because it was one of those things where it wasn't like instantly recognizable that's, you know what I mean? Like a lot of the times when you get a pretty big name actor or actress to play a part like that, the entire time you see them, you're constantly like, oh, it's Jamie Lee Curtis.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't watch the movie at almost no point there was points where I had to like remind myself and be like, oh shit, that's Jamie Lee Curtis. Like when you get lost in something like that for such a big name,
Yeah.
that's always impressive to me.
Like, yeah, with the hot dog fingers, where they're like, she's like, "Oh, play me something," and then she starts playing the piano with her feet.
With her
It's
feet.
just like, oh my god. Cameron, did the movie? I guess did it lose anything on a rewatch? Because I feel like sometimes, like crazy movies, or like ones that are kind of like wild, will kind of lose some of that like spark when you go to rewatch it again. Did it?
No, I don't think so. So like obviously you know where one of the cool thing about watching for the first time is you're like, where is this going? But the second time I think you just appreciate the ride. And again, that's the other thing is some of these movies, if they do this, right, like are based on just pure randomness, and that's kind of the shtick. And once you watch it once and you know what happens, you're kind of like, okay, whatever. But this movie has so much more in it, just besides the randomness and what is happening from next, scene to scene. Like I mean, like the second and third acts of the movie are still like, still hit hard, emotionally, because that's where you really get into the meat of the family dynamics aspect of it, I think, and the part where she then also connects her trauma or her daughter's trauma with her to her trauma with her dad, and it's like, I'm not going to let her go. Why was it so easy for you to let me go? Like those types of things still had a lot of impact. And I think that's what makes this film continue to be entertaining and meaningful beyond the first watch. It is more than just the randomness between scenes. Speaking of which, though, did you guys like the fake out the end where she died? Like in the middle of the movie?
Oh, yeah, and it started to roll credits.
Yeah. Like she died in the fight or whatever, and then it said the end and rolled credits. And then it went to her like in a different universe.
Yeah, it was a little hard to understand there at that part, because you're like, wait, she's gonna die in this world, and do we find another one? But it was like she was already in a different world at that point.
Well, she had become, because the whole premise that before that was like, I need to become like my daughter so I can beat her. And so she basically does. She basically has her consciousness spread across all universes at once, effectively linking all of them together, which is a wild concept. But
I feel like the other thing is that never in the movie does it seem like it takes itself too seriously, though, or like
yeah,
it's not above like a stupid joke.
Oh, I mean, the first when she gestures over to her trophies and is like, if you don't get these without seeing some shit. And then later,
they all look like,
and they're all butt plugs.
Yes.
Yeah. And then later, they're trying to figure out random stuff to do, and they both look at the butt plug on the table. And then the guy pulls down his pants, and she's just like moving around this trophy to avoid him sitting on it.
And then the fucking security guard just flies in.
He's so funny in this. Some of his scenes really crack me up.
Yeah, the one I was thinking of is like when she's like, "Let me show you," and they do the little thing.
Yeah,
where they, like lock their hands and like open it up, and it looks like a vagina.
Yeah,
it's like, oh my god. Or I think it's just before that where the daughter, like the guy, like tries to attack her, and she like turns the nightsticks into like dildos and starts beating the guy to death. You're like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it's cool. It's definitely not above that kind of humor, but it does it, like I said,
semi-toilet humor.
It's definitely to downright toilet humor.
I was to say, I think the person wielding two dildos as weapons is downright toilet humor.
This is really Saints Row humor, if you ever played that game. But it's very similar to that, where you can like beat someone to death with a giant dildo, but yeah.
I mean, there's so many moments, it might be hard, but were there memorable moments, scenes, or like lines that really stood out to you within the film?
I give them credit for making it something where you stayed paying attention and your eyes stuck to the screen so well when it was two fucking non-moving rocks.
Oh yeah,
yeah. That scene was awesome.
To draw you in enough to just be standing there, basically looking at a landscape painting, with captions kind of coming up slowly. I give them credit because that's tough to pull off but they had you so invested in what was going on, and it was so outlandish that you were like, okay, something's bound to happen here, but it didn't. It was just rocks. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that was good. I don't know. I'm always just so drawn to the parts closer to the end where it's getting more towards like the point and resolution. Like in the one universe where they're not married and she's like a successful movie star and he's like a CEO or something. He says to her, so even though you have broken my heart yet again, I wanted to say in another life, I would have really liked just doing laundry and taxes with you. Which like is kind of funny, but it's also like a poignant point, I think, where it's like, you know, I think people dream often of like doing movies, like being a movie star or whatever, and doing all these things. And they're like, oh, if I didn't, you know, do this other thing and I might have, you know, been wildly successful or whatever. But, you know, the grass isn't always greener on the other side. And, you know, a lot of times those personal connections are more important than material wealth.
That's
and
like
those types of aspirations.
when I had told Hannah about this movie, I was like, oh yeah, no, it's like a lady who gets to sort of live or like experience all these other versions of herself and like see the divergent paths in her life. Hannah was like, that's kind of depressing to think about. And I was like, but it's not like about that though.
The point of the movie is not to be depressing.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, that's kind of like the daughter's like kind of take on it is kind of depressing. It's like,
yeah,
there's so many different possibilities everywhere and you're just a little speck, nothing matters. But then the flip side of that, which I think is like what ultimately wins out, is like, that's true, but also like, you know, some things do matter and that's what you have to cherish. I do like, though, as a kind of a footnote to that, when they're kind of explaining like why specifically her, you know, and he's like, you are bad at everything. All of your paths have led you to be bad at everything. So therefore you have a lot of paths that are close to, in proximity to really good versions, good, you know, skillful versions of yourself. Which is funny.
that was so funny. I was
Yeah.
I was like, damn, they're really just roasting her right now. Because it's kind of like it's a funny part of the movie because it's like, oh, like you're the chosen one, you're gonna be great, and then it's like, well, we chose you because you're
You're
not
so
that
good because you're bad at literally everything, and you've made all of the worst decisions possible.
You're so mid. You've wrapped it back around to being the one.
Some of the other things are like callbacks. Like in the beginning, they have like they have like googly eyes on some of the stuff in the laundromat, and then later, that becomes a big thing. And googly eyes is kind of like the opposite of the bagel, you know? Like you have like bagel, black, white on the inside, the eyes are white outside, black inside. Or like when she mixes
I didn't
up.
even think about that.
The other thing is it's such a hilarious scene when she mixes up ratatouille with raccoonie, and then later there's a universe where there is a raccoonie, and you know, she like exposed it or whatever. But you know, some of those parts are funny to see.
When she does that, when she like cracks the egg on the lady's face, and then I'll have to give more of your shifts to Chad, and you see Chad's just doing all this stuff. And there's a giant raccoon tail poking out the back of his hat. It's just like, jeez, how has no one noticed this?
And then she like walks in to her on it, and he's like goes to like try and kill her or something, and then
Yeah, he's like, she's gonna expose
like,
us.
I told you
Kill
she
her.
couldn't be trusted.
Raccoonie, no,
Well,
I'm
then,
sorry,
like,
I let you down.
They're like trying to like chase down the like animal control place, and she's like on his head pulling his hair, and then he can't make it, so she's like, no, get on my shoulders. It's like sprints and turbo mode.
And it's so ridiculous, but it doesn't feel. The funny thing is, it doesn't feel as ridiculous while you're watching the movie. Like, if you describe any of these scenes to anyone who hasn't seen the movie, I feel like it sounds like the dumbest thing in the world. And, like, maybe it is, but, like, it doesn't feel like that when you're watching it, at least to me.
Yeah, it's kind of just like a piece of it.
Yeah.
In a sense. Like, I mean, hell, like we were talking about. At one point, somebody jumps on a butt plug shaped Auditor of the Year award or whatever. Like, it just kind of feels like it's a part of the movie in that sense.
Yeah.
Like, you're never like, oh yeah, that's a bit too crazy. I never thought about the like what you were saying, the googly eyes cam, like how it's the opposite. I just always kind of took it like with the on the nose bit where like Waymond is like, he says, you think because I'm kind, that means I'm naive, and maybe I am, but it's strategic and necessary, and this is just how I fight. Like, he's optimistic about things, and that's kind of Evelyn like accepts that and like starts to use that as her weapon later on, where she's like doing the fight on the stairs to go try and save her daughter, and it's just being like super nice and like kind to everyone.
Yeah.
I would say another weird like cameo type that I didn't. Jenny Slate being in the movie for like all of just like kind of a couple minutes.
Yeah.
But even in the beginning, they play it off like she's kind of important. Like, I gotta stop her and talk to her, and they're like, inviting her to the party and that. And then she plays no importance again.
Like she fights with her dog for like 2
She
seconds.
does fight with the dog for a couple seconds. Yeah.
Which very interesting, very interesting part of the movie where she's just flinging around the dog like a nunchuck. Because then she's also like, she's like defensive of the dog because like Evelyn like cuts the dog off and it flies away and she gets pissed, but at the same time she's like, sorry dog, and like kicking it around and like flinging it. I'm like, what the hell? You're giving me mixed signals.
Oh, Dylan, you sent this message before I'd really gotten into the movie because we postponed a bit. When you said
no,
the paper cut scene, and I was like, oh God, I don't want to have to watch this. And then I was like, when is this going to happen? And then it started to happen, and I went,
where he's intentionally trying to give himself
paper cuts. And he can't do it. He can't do it. And I'm like, just stop trying. Kill me. Just kill me. I don't care. I don't need to jump. Just end it. Oh, and then he has to do like 4 of them. Oh God. Why?
Like post watching the movie, I was kind of thinking about it. I was like, violence in movies doesn't really affect me. Like stabbed, shot, whatever. I'm like, like that's, it's the movie. But for some reason, and maybe it's because I know what the pain is like, the paper cut scene was like, just so I cringed and could not actually watch it. That was the one I had to like put my eyes up and like.
Yeah, there's definitely some where it's like, okay, yeah, he got shot in the arm. Like, okay, maybe it's just because it's never happened to me that I'm just like,
yeah,
like
God.
maybe if
you've been shot, you're like, I don't want to watch any more shooting scenes.
Yeah,
yeah,
but yeah, that paper cut thing was just like, oh my God, I couldn't do it.
Like Hannah she wasn't watching it with me. She like had headphones on and was watching something else, but like glanced up at the TV because I was like, and she's like, what the hell? Fast forward through this. What are you doing? It is a weird like disassociation because it's like anything else I would have just been like, oh yeah, whatever. But because it's something I know the pain of, I feel like is why it makes me physically cringe so much.
I just think not just like, I mean, even it's like if you ever watch like a old like Vietnam type movie and it's like the torture, like the bamboo in the fingernails and that, it's like, that feeling of like something getting into your fingernail. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Just makes my spine shiver, and I don't want to think about it. I think Cam's got some trivia.
I do have some. We're gonna see how it goes.
All right, hit us.
Okay. So welcome to my guest trivia section. Hopefully it doesn't suck. All right. So the first question. This is a multiple choice, multiple select. So we'll play it this way. You can select as many answers as you'd like, but if you get one of them wrong, you don't get any points. But you get a point for each correct answer. I won't tell you how many correct answers there are. All right. So we talked about how acclaimed this movie was. This movie holds or held the number one spot on Letterboxd top 250 feature films. Which of these movies have also held that top spot prior to this movie releasing? And again, so you can select as many as you want, but if you get one wrong, you get no points. So the movies are Parasite, The Dark Knight, The Godfather, and The Shawshank Redemption.
Ben, I will let you go first because I am at least sure of one.
I have one that I can think of, and it would be like Parasite, because it's one that actually came out in recent times that like people would have seen and flooded reviews for. I feel like these other ones, like, I just don't know, man. I'm gonna say Parasite, and that's gonna be the one. I'm gonna just risk the 1 point.
Okay, fair enough.
Parasite is definitely it. It was like the most reviewed one for a long time on Letterboxd. The issue that I have with the other ones is like Shawshank's number one on IMDb, but I feel like it's, like you said, it's not recent enough to be on that list. Like, I feel like people probably put it on their Letterboxd list, but I don't think it's like people are like rushing to put it on there and it's like flooded. I will risk it for the biscuit, and I will add The Dark Knight. I feel like that is a heavily beloved movie. It's fairly recent, and people feel pretty strongly about that one.
All right. So, you guys are both right on Parasite, but Dark Knight is not the answer, unfortunately.
Damn.
So, I assume how it went is there was a movie that a bunch of people really liked and rated very high, and then Parasite came out. That took the top spot from it. And then it was this movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once. So there have only been 3. And the other movie was actually The Godfather, surprisingly.
Wow.
So
Okay.
as you noted, Shawshank is number 1 on IMDb. But Godfather's like 3, I think. 2 or 3 on top IMDb, top 250.
I think Godfather's...
And The Dark Knight's up there, too.
I think Godfather's 3 and Godfather 2 is like 4? Or maybe they're switched.
And I think Dark Knight might be 2 even. So
yeah,
it makes sense. I picked other answers that were near the top. But so Ben, sorry, go ahead.
You're right. It's Shawshank, Godfather, Dark Knight, Godfather Part 2.
Okay. So Ben gets a point. It was a good try, Dylan. It was a valiant effort, but unfortunately not.
No, believe me, I get it. The people who love The Dark Knight fucking love The Dark Knight.
Are
and,
vocal.
And they are a vocal group.
It is also higher rated right now, I think, on Letterboxd than the Batman from last year or from earlier this year.
It's because I guarantee you there are Nolan fanboys who don't care how good the Batman was. They'll sit there and be like, oh, it's not as good as The Dark Knight. I have to make sure I rate it lower.
Dylan? I think the Dark...
Dylan? What does that look for, Dylan?
You're just probably triggering a bunch of people.
Dylan is not a Nolan stan. He is not.
I
He is
am
the
not. I
opposite.
am whatever the opposite of
Yeah.
that is me.
I like a lot of
I think
Nolan
he's good.
movies, but yeah.
He's good. I don't think he's like the greatest of all time, like some people think.
I mean, if he is making a movie, like, I'll be more apt to like watch it because I know I know he made it, but like, I'm not like everything he makes is amazing. I mean, a lot of the stuff he makes is really fucking good, but I do think the Batman was a better Batman movie at least. All right. So we're at Ben with a point. All right, next question. So, if you guys recall, very early in the movie, she is propelled into the janitor's closet, from her seat. So there's a sign on the janitor's closet. What does the sign read on it? Does it read A, 401k, B, 1099, C, 1040, or D, W-2? It's one of these four.
All right, read the four options again.
All right, 401k, 1099, 1040, or W-2. These are also, of course, all common tax, signifiers and forms.
I was going to say, I feel like hopefully it's not 401k because the other three are tax forms. I'm going to go on 1040 just purely based off of, it's the number one tax form.
All right. So I was between two. Dylan guessed the one, so I'm going to say fuck it and go with 1099.
Well, the answer is 1099, so Ben takes it.
Whew.
And
The fuck?
Get wrecked, Dylan. Get fucking wrecked.
Ah! How
All right.
could I know?
All right, so even though Ben has won, I'm going to read the last question because I think it's funny. So, they had a working title for the movie, to not spoil things, I guess, in production. And what was that title? What was the working title for that? A divorce story. B, a couple commits tax fraud. C, a woman tries to do her taxes. Or D, a man gets a plug.
I'm gonna say couple commits tax fraud.
I'm gonna go with Multiverse of Madness. You know what? No, just because I want it to be the answer, I'm gonna say it's a man gets a plug.
No, so both of you are wrong. The alternate title was A Woman Tries to Do Her Taxes. But I was proud of A Couple Commits Tax Fraud. I liked that one as a thing.
That one seems very, it seems a little on the nose, but...
Yeah. So anyway, congrats, Ben. You won this week's trivia.
I hate you. I shouldn't have risked it for the biscuit.
You shouldn't have.
It was, you didn't win. To be fair, you wouldn't have won anyway. Oh, I guess you might have tied.
He would have tied if he got 2 points on the first one.
That's true. You would have tied if you got the 2 points on the first one.
Too bad you suck,
But if you didn't,
bro.
but if you didn't risk it, you wouldn't have won anyway. So, if it's
In
any
hindsight,
consolation,
sure.
and I admire your boldness to go for it. So, if that means anything, it doesn't get you a win.
My logic was sound in my own mind,
I mean, it was. It just wasn't the right one.
and no one else's mind was it sound, but mine.
No, it was sound logic. I mean, it just wasn't the right. It just wasn't right.
Damn recency bias. Why weren't you true?
I was surprised when I saw that too. I was surprised that because, like I said, I imagine it was like a bunch of people got onto the app and rated a bunch of movies, and they were like, "Yes, Godfather's the best."
I feel like that's another movie where, some people have it in their minds before they've ever even seen the movie that movie's the best movie. So no matter what, they're watching it thinking that, so then they're automatically going to review it that it's super good.
Well, Cam is the only one who had seen this film, so he's not going first. Ben and I will give you fresh ratings, and then Cam will give you an updated and a nostalgia rating from 2 months ago.
Yeah,
Maybe there's not much update.
This feels weird. I've never been first before. Normally I'm the last. So like I said, I didn't really know much about this. I knew it had come out. I knew that it was kind of like this indie type movie, and I knew it had to do with like this whole multiversal kind of thing. Other than that, I knew like nothing. I didn't know it was like an action comedy. I didn't have any idea what I was walking into when I started this movie. Other than I think Zach saying it's the best thing he's seen this. It's the best movie he's seen. Maybe period. Did he say, or was it just this year? Like it's the best movie that's come out this year. But I was very pleasantly surprised. This movie was fun. It was exciting. It made you think. It made you feel. It did a lot of things in a 2 hour and 20-minute window. I very much enjoyed it. Like I said, not knowing what I was walking into, it was very good. I kind of wish I would have seen it in theaters. I feel like it would have been kind of better than on my basement television. But I gave it an 8.5. I was between an 8 and a 9, so we're just going to split the difference. 8.5. It's very good. I hope it hits streaming services relatively soon so that I can tell people I know to watch it. Although, realistically, it was worth the rent on Amazon. Don't worry, guys. I didn't pirate this movie. I know. I know you were immediately like, oh, it's not available anywhere. Ben's going to pirate it. Nope. I spent my hard-earned money to watch this movie. And it was worth it.
$20 for it.
I was going to say, I did buy it as well. I don't normally buy movies, but I did buy this one.
I did not buy it for the expectation that much like every movie, it will hit streaming services at some point, and I will rewatch it then.
What's funny is like literally until like a couple days prior to when we were going to like watch it, you could not rent it. Like it only became available for rental like at the beginning of July.
Yeah. And my issue is that, it'll leave streaming services sometime, and then I'll want to watch it. That one time, it's not on streaming services, so.
With most movies, I don't agree, but with this one, I'll be like, I might just want to watch it. But most of the time, I'm fine with. I mean, it's the same thing with like Game Pass. Like most of the time, I'm like, if it's on there, I'll play it. If not, whatever.
I guess I don't know. I'm definitely somebody who gets in the mood for a certain movie, and I'm like, I want to watch this now. And if it's not available, I'm like, shit. Well, time to get it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it has to be like a particular movie. I would like a particular thing, like not just, like I don't know. But I'm also not as well. I know, but
that's what I mean. Like I gotta be like, you know what? I really want to watch like Star Wars right now, and then you go do it. But it's not. Yeah, I mean, I'm not like, you know what? I'm thinking a movie it's a little funny, but it's a little zany. It is like a very particular.
I just like to picture Dylan sitting in this fucking giant like wingback chair, like a little cup of tea and his legs crossed. I'm looking for a movie. You in my head you sound like what was the Martin Short character, Jiminy Glick?
From what?
For a movie.
Oh my god.
I do like that the on Letterboxd, if you've seen everything everywhere all at once, the watched button is a googly eye.
Oh yeah, I do. I do. I remember that from when it came out.
Much like Ben, I didn't necessarily know what to expect. I mean, I had seen the trailer when this was announced, and I so wanted to see this movie. I mean, I'll pretty much see anything A24 puts out at this point. But I was really wanting to watch this, and then everyone who had seen it in theaters was like, Dylan, you're going to love this thing. And sometimes I get a little worried by that, because then I like pump up my expectations really high, and it's not always as good as I think it's going to be. But for this one, this movie definitely met my expectations and then some. It's an experience, much like, some of the other movies that you guys didn't necessarily like, like House or some of these other movies. I think this one is definitely one of those experience movies. It's wild, it's out there, and most importantly, it has so much heart that really makes the movie worth the almost 2.5 hour runtime. Keeps you guessing. The humor is funny. and I don't know. I love it, and I think it's definitely going on one of my favorites lists. Definitely, probably the best movie I've seen this year so far that's released this year. Batman's up there, but I think this is probably better in my opinion. Um, I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10. I'll be interested to see, like I asked you, Cam, how it holds up on a rewatch for me. But as of now, like first viewing, it way exceeded my expectations.
This movie's an experience, but unlike House, I enjoyed it and I wanted to finish it.
Oh my gosh.
Hey, I waited until you were done politely to throw that comment in.
Good old House. Yeah, so I love this movie a lot. I think this is definitely the best movie that I've seen this year. It's probably the best movie I've seen, like, I don't know. It's probably one of my top 3 favorite movies that I've seen. I mean, maybe it's recency bias, but, like, I don't know. I think that this movie is fantastic. It's got a lot of, like, pretty much everything you could want. It's silly. It's got action in it. It's intense. But then at the core of it all, it's also, like I said, even on another watch, you get, you know, the underlying, not even underlying, but you get the themes of it. You get the real story of the family dynamics, and like the purpose of life and like personal relationships and all of this good stuff in there. And it's so moving, in my opinion, that even on multiple watches, unlike some other movies like comedies or even action movies where it kind of dulls out when you watch it multiple times because you know what's going to happen. I don't think you get that dulling as much here. So when I saw it the first time, I gave it a 10 out of 10, and I'm going to leave it at 10 out of 10. I think it's awesome. It's one of the best movies I've seen.
Is this the first 10 out of 10 from Cam on the podcast?
Yeah, it is. It is, yeah.
Wow.
It's so good. It's so good.
If you enjoyed this, don't forget to rate and subscribe. Check us out on Instagram at Cocktails and Classics Pod. Let us know what you thought of everything everywhere all at once. Hit up the Drizzly and Casker links below to get yourself your like 7 liquors or whatever it was to make yourself a Long Island iced tea. Leave a review wherever you listen, Apple or Spotify, Google helps us out. And check us out next week. Share us with your friends and family. And as always, watch responsibly.